This is the Bluegrass Blues Podcast, episode 15. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Amy.
I think you're hearing trains in the background. Well, that's a good little segment here because we can talk about travel. And we haven't been doing this for a few weeks because, Amy's been out of the country, and it'd be interesting to see where you've been and what you've seen.
Cool. Yeah, I took my son who just graduated from college to Italy. He wanted to go to Rome for his graduation present. Yes, I'm a good mom. And we spent about a week and a half in Italy and Rome. We went to the Amalfi Coast. We went to Pompeii. We went to Naples, and we had a really great time. It was very nice to be away from U.S. politics. I actually had a screen rule because my son is 23 and is on a screen like a lot. Mm-hmm. So the screen rule was that when we were walking and when we were eating out and about, no phones except for if we're using them as cameras. And then he could do whatever he wanted when we were back at the Airbnb at night. And that was lovely. We had a great time. And my son's favorite three things on the trip were, there is this awesome hike called the Path of the Gods in the Amalfi Coast. It's up on the cliffs of the Amalfi Coast, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I hiked part of it with him, and then he did the whole thing and was so proud of himself. The second favorite was the Colosseum. We went there at night initially and walked all around the Roman Forum and the Colosseum and Trevi Fountain, and boy, the ruins are just so cool, and they're all illuminated at night. And then during the day we did some tours there, and it was really interesting. I don't know if you knew this, Jesse, but they, at the Colosseum, at one time, I think there were 75,000 people that could watch the gore in the Colosseum. And sometimes they flooded the bottom of the Colosseum to mimic naval warfare.
Yeah, I do recall that.
That was fascinating.
They were just going crazy in those days. I've been to Italy a couple of times. The steps of the Spanish Steps are really beautiful. Yeah. I once saw, a murmuration of sparrows. Yeah. Those birds that looks like a dark cloud. And I can imagine someone seeing that in the 16th and 17th century and thinking that there was some evil spirit going on because, sure. It's just a very weird look. Also went to the Vatican
yes.
One Christmas, took my wife and kid there. Italy's really a beautiful place, and I'm sure you saw other Americans there. I just wonder what how they approached this scene, because Americans don't get a good reputation when they go across the pond, as they say.
Well, tourism is a big deal, and it was after peak tourist season. It was in November, and so people were really happy to see us. And we talked a lot to folks and spent money, eating cannolis and all the good things. So actually, people were very happy to see us. The conversations we did get in, it was pretty... it was very apparent that we were progressive and we were anti-Trump, and most everyone we talked to were sympathetic to us, including, drivers and, taxi drivers, etc. So we did have some really interesting conversations. And one thing I did notice being there as a woman in my early 60s is I could walk at night and feel really safe. And one of the things I always think about when I'm in Europe in general is the fact that there are just so few firearms. Mm-hmm. I do not walk in my own neighborhood in Louisville at night, and I hear gunshots in my neighborhood. So, you think about those things when you're across the pond and, sort of reflecting on pros and cons. Now, I will say that the third favorite was Pompeii, and we were in some very recent excavation things where we were seeing new frescoes, and it was awesome. But the gentleman who was a third generation Pompeii tour guide did tell us that the economy is not good, and it's really difficult to have jobs outside of tourism. And so, I didn't do a deep dive into Italy's economy, but it didn't sound so easy to, get a good job.
Right, that's too bad. Yeah, and tourism is a huge thing over in Europe. We would see lots of things happening there, and it's probably part of the reason tourism is falling off is because Americans aren't going anywhere because we can't afford to go anywhere anymore. The cost of living here is increasing, although it's not supposed to be. People are talking about, people are just trying to get by these days.
And I will say, flying during the shutdown was a little,
right.
We flew out of O'Hare. O'Hare was really hit with a lot of, flight cancellations, but we did find out that most of those all the flight cancellations were domestic flights.
Yeah.
And we had flown to Iceland on the way to Italy, and once we were, on an international flight, we were not affected.
Did you fly out the day that the UPS plane crashed in Louisville?
I did.
So that might have had some impact too on the air traffic.
A lot of people called me panicked because initially we didn't know whether it was a cargo flight or a passenger flight, and people didn't know if I wasn't flying out of Standerford Field what are we called now?
Muhammad Ali International Airport.
Yeah, right. So, and because we drove to O'Hare, we were driving when all this happened, and I started getting a flood of calls and texts like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" So, but I will tell you that my ex-husband worked at Grade A at a place that was hit, and two young women who worked there were killed. One was a single mom, at least one, they might have both been single moms, and my ex-husband knew them, and he waited to tell us until we got back from our trip about knowing these wonderful women who were killed.
Well, you weren't here when it happened, but one of the things that we first heard about it because we got an emergency message on our phones, that emergency broadcast system kind of thing, which said something's happened at the airport, stay inside.
Shelter in place.
Yeah, shelter in place. And so, I immediately looked around, saw what was going on, saw that there was an airplane crash. And then you look out the window and there's just this huge cloud of black smoke coming over the city. It was to the east of us. But you could tell that it was one of these things where the cloud was just continually going over the city.
Right.
So it's very scary. And
there were how many, like a couple 100,000, I don't know. There was a ton of fuel in it, right? Because they were going to fly all the way to Hawaii.
Right. Yeah, it was a full flight. If you saw all the coverage of it since, it's obviously mechanical failure because all the pilots had tons of experience flying that model of airplane. The plane had some issues before concerning maintenance, and if you see the video or pictures of the plane taking off, you see the engine falling off.
Yeah.
And when I saw some pilot analyze what was happening, that engine fell off. When it fell off, the other engine, it's supposed to be able to fly on one engine, and it's a 3-engine plane. The second engine was sputtering on takeoff while the first engine was falling off, and the third engine didn't have enough power to get it above 30 feet. Then it crashed, and it had people, we were stuck inside until the next day. I walked the next day, and there were no, the black cloud was gone, but they're going to be doing repair on that area forever. It went through buildings. It hit a petroleum recycling plant. So it's just from the pollution standpoint, it's really bad. And they're still doing maintenance work there. Traffic was stopped.
And it killed 14 people?
I think 14 people on the ground and the 3 pilots. As you said, 2 died near where your former husband worked. So it makes you kind of paranoid about flying. You flew that day. You didn't know exactly what was going on. I'm actually going to be flying next week. I'm going to fly from here to Washington, D.C., and then go up to New York City for Thanksgiving, spend Thanksgiving with my family. I still have family in Brooklyn. My nieces and nephews live there. And so I'll be there for a few days, and then I'm going to fly back here. My advantage, I guess, is that air traffic control is back in order because the shutdown is finished for now. And the airport I'm flying into from here is one where there was a plane crash. Like at the first week of Trump's term, there was a plane crash in the Potomac where a helicopter hit a plane that was landing at the airport. And it was where I live in my home in Washington. I have a co-op there. I have a view of the airport, so if I had been there, I probably could have seen the plane crash. And I hate thinking about that when I'm flying because I have this paranoia about flight in general, because to me the logic of a multi-ton piece of metal in the air does not make sense. But I'm going to fly anyway. And I'm going to go there, then I'm going to take the train up to New York and see the family. And, New York's been in the news recently because of Zoran Mandami winning the New York mayoral race.
Right.
That was amazing because it was pretty much a reaction against billionaires and against the super wealthy. Zoran, as everyone knows, is a democratic socialist. And Attica Scott actually did a piece on just being a black woman in the South and what it meant to her as a black woman living in Louisville, paying attention. The democratic socialist, as she says, has proven for years that it is the pulse on people's priorities. Mandami wants to freeze rent, implement a $30 minimum wage, and offer free public transportation. And those are really good things to talk about. But the other side of this is that Congress yesterday passed this resolution that I'm going to read it. Congress denounces socialism in all its forms and opposes the implementation of socialist policies in the United States, which is totally stupid, because by saying this, you're saying, okay, we're denouncing socialism. We don't want any socialism at all. Which means, that means you don't want Social Security. Mm-hmm. That's socialism. Mm-hmm. You don't want Medicare. That's socialism. Mm-hmm. You don't want the government doing anything. And we've already proven that just being a totally capitalist society doesn't work for the great majority of the population. It's great for the 0.1% at the top income levels because they're just raking in all the dough. But people on the lower economic scales are, just getting screwed over with this current administration. And the fact that, 86 Democrats voted for this is just, it's appalling, because I'd like to think if I were a representative in Congress, I would have said, I would have had a speech on the floor of Congress, and I would have said, look, I'm not voting for this because it's just a stupid bill. And I would go through these lists of, okay, you're voting for this. You're saying that you don't want Social Security anymore. Why should people elect you? You're voting for this. You say you shouldn't have Medicare. Why should people vote for you? And just the fact that 86 Democrats voted for that is just appalling. But
not Morgan. Not Morgan.
That's right. I was very surprised by Morgan McGarvey, actually. And he didn't abstain either. He voted no on it, which is, to his credit, that was the right vote. It's, socialism in Republican terms is like the great evil. They don't know the difference between socialism and communism. They don't know the difference between socialism and fascism. They just don't. These are just words that make no sense to them. And we're going through this whole idea of the distribution of wealth, and there should be a fairer distribution of wealth, which is one of the tenets of socialism. And I'm not saying this because I'm a socialist. I'm just saying this because I understand what's going on here. We already have the distribution of wealth, and the distribution of wealth in this country is going to the very, very rich. And I mean, what can we do? What are we supposed to? How are we supposed to approach this? That's a question that is going to be sticking with us for a while.
Well, and I want to address that later in the podcast too, as to something that we can do around Thanksgiving time.
And let's see, what else? Well, the other thing, I'm going to New York. It's now Mamdani is the mayor of New York. And I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday someone posted on X, formerly Twitter, now Elon Musk's little propaganda tool.
Who just negotiated his $1 trillion salary package.
Yes, we should talk about that too. I actually am doing this thing where I'm looking up where the billionaires are. It's like Forbes actually does a daily update on the wealth of the billionaire class, and Musk is at something like $460 billion,
right.
Almost $500 billion, and the next four. Jeff Bezos is on the list, and he's the fourth richest person in the world, and he has a mere $230 billion. That is what the redistribution of wealth has done in this country.
The CEO of NVIDIA.
Yeah.
He has.
Well, it's Musk. Then it's I think it's the guy who runs CBS now. I forget his name. And then it's Larry's a Google executive is third. Larry Page, and then it's Bezos, Jeff Bezos. So, and these are just the top four, and of the four, between the four of them, they have $1 trillion. That's four people. And I just have to wrap this around in my brain. Four people in this country have a combined wealth of $1 trillion, and we're trying to figure out how to make ends meet.
Feed children.
Feed our families. How to pay for medical expenses, which is what the whole shutdown was about. It was about Medicare and not Medicare, but the Affordable Care Act, where.
But that wasn't what the shutdown was about, because that's the Democrats. The Democratic part of the shutdown was about that, right? It was big. The shutdown also was largely a Republican.
Well, yeah, but the Republicans were blaming the Democrats for the shutdown because the Democrats were focused on the idea of making health care affordable for everyone.
Right.
And if you look at what's happened now, this is the season when people are supposed to sign up for the ACA. So. If you were paying X amount last year, your policies are going to at least double this year because there's no barrier to, or the benefits you were getting from the government are disappearing because as a result of that bullshit bill that passed earlier, the big, beautiful bullshit bill, that actually is taking away the money that have gone to healthcare expenses. And we're at this point where people are, you can't afford medicine. Like I'm going through some health issues now because I'm getting older, and I had a recent CAT scan that showed some trouble with plaque in the heart and the beginnings of an aneurysm. And these are things I have to worry about, just the cost of dealing with this. Now, I'm on Medicare, so I am covered for a good bulk of this, but if I were on the ACA, my options are to go into whatever financial resources I have or die.
Right.
And that's the option for most Americans right now, where there are people who were paying a certain amount of money every year for their health care, and now they were paying $500 a month, which is a lot of money, but now it's going to $1,000
Yeah,
or $2,000
my brother is
a
a
month.
small business owner over in the Floyd County, and their premiums are doubling.
Right.
And that's common. He was a Trump voter too. Speaking of which, Marjorie Taylor Greene, let's talk about her and what's happened to her as a result of these rising health insurance prices.
Well, she's actually announced yesterday that she's going to leave Congress because of, she's leaving Congress. She didn't really give a reason, but the reasons that she has sort of hinted at were she found that the healthcare costs are going too high for her children. Now, she's in Congress, and she has like that gold-plated healthcare act where Congress will pay for everything if you are a congressional person or if you're in the immediate family or whatever. But if you're a child of a congressperson, you are being hit with the whole cost of dealing with the after effects of the big bullshit bill. So that's one thing that she was all tied up about. The other thing she was tied up about was the Epstein files, which, there's been a lot of really atrocious comments on, it's like certain MAGAs are so engulfed in Trump that now they're saying that pedophilia isn't such a bad thing.
Child rape.
Yeah, right. It's, I don't know if you saw Megyn Kelly the other day where she said that, 15 isn't the same as 5, or 15 isn't the same as 8, or Jeffrey Epstein really wasn't a pedophile because he was going for 13-year-old girls, not 8-year-olds. And I sat there and I thought, I'm going to swear now, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
There's this idea that especially the MAGA people are now saying things like, oh, it's not so bad, or, oh, he wasn't really molesting children. He was, their euphemism is having sex with underage girls, but that's just rape.
Yeah.
They're raping children. And the fact that they will say this with a straight face after all their years of complaining about things like Obama wearing a tan jacket and, Joe...
Fear and greed.
Yeah.
These people are making so much money.
Yeah, it's just...
It's disgusting.
It's horrible. Back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah. She was very active in trying to get the Epstein files out, and still is. And the Congress has passed it, which, if we're going to get into the Epstein file issue, Donald Trump could just release the files tomorrow. We are going through this whole rigmarole of, let's have a House vote on this. The House passes it. Let's have a Senate vote on this. The Senate passes it. Well, now we have to go to the Justice Department to see if there are things that we should release because of national security. And then maybe the president will sign off on it. But the reality is Donald Trump could have released those files the day he came into office, and he didn't. And you know why I know this? Because he released the files on Martin Luther King, and he released the files on John F. Kennedy's assassination. So what they're saying is just, it goes along with the bullshit bill. They are consistent on their bullshit, at least.
Well, and we just learned about Venezuela, possibly going to war with Venezuela. Every day, again, there's some distracting piece of news that distracts us from the release of the full, unredacted release of the Epstein files. But I do have friends, Jesse, that wonder, like, okay, so they get released. We already know that he's a 34 times convicted felon and grabbed her by the pussy and like the whole thing. What's it going to matter?
It matters because raping children is wrong. People who rape children are monsters. And if we're willing to accept a monster as our president, then we have failed as a country. We've failed as a society. We are moral failures.
And child rape really does transcend partisanship, doesn't it?
Well, remember when the guy went into Washington to shoot up the pizza parlor because allegedly Hillary Clinton had a child sex ring in the basement of what was it? I forget the name of the pizza parlor, but I know I lived in Washington. I know it. That I just thought that was, how could that person be so stupid? Like, okay, I'm going to go in and rescue these children from this child predator ring. That was a MAGA thought. That was what MAGA was putting out there. And now MAGA doesn't see anything wrong with their president, the person they put in office, doing the evil that they accused Hillary Clinton of doing. They just see nothing wrong with that because we have a distinction between an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Right.
This is just madness. But this is the time we're living in. And back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was very open. She's very open about getting the Epstein files released. And now she's quitting Congress. And I'm sure there's an ulterior motive to this. There have been rumors that she's seeking higher office, maybe a Senate seat in Georgia. She's been doing the rounds of the talk shows where she comes off as like a normal person. You know, remember when she was talking about Jewish space lasers and every other conspiracy theory, and she's now saying, "Oh, I was duped." You know, well, if you were duped by something like that, you shouldn't be running for office. You shouldn't be seeking higher office. But that's where we are.
Sarah Palin.
Yeah, well,
Kind of reminds me of
yeah, well, yeah, Sarah Palin. She's she's probably worse than Sarah Palin because Sarah Palin pretended to be sane for a little while, but she was greedy. Marjorie Taylor Greene was just saying the most absurd, crazy stuff and getting into fights with other congresswomen. You know, the nails issue with Jasmine Crockett, or, you know, mocking Ocasio-Cortez on the floor of the House. So she's leaving, but she's doing this redemption tour on the news programs, which is kind of appalling. Anyway, I'm going to New York, and there was another Mamdani thing that came up that I thought was worth noting. I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday there was this thing on X where it was saying, breaking, Zoran Mamdani to require all New York elementary school students to learn Arabic numerals. Now, that was done by some, I think, some betting website or something, some betting company, and it was a pickup of another post by a guy who said the same thing, and that post got 14 million views. 14 million people reacted to it, and there were thousands of comments, and the comments were, you know, oh, this is proof that Zoran Mamdani is going to put Sharia law in New York City, and he's going to have all the children learning the Quran and all this other weird stuff. And honestly, children should learn Arabic numbers by the time they're 5 years old.
Right.
Yeah, they should know it before they're in kindergarten. Their parents should be teaching it to them while they're in the cradle, while they're nursing, because Arabic numbers are the numbers we use today. I just, it's just, there's just so, that is just so stupid. And I saw it and I thought, I feel bad because I saw the post and I thought, this is a joke, but people aren't going to get it. And there's going to be all these people going nuts about, you know, the evils of Islamic rule and Sharia law and putting Qurans and replacing the Bible with the Quran. Where I think this shows, how do I say this delicately, the ignorance of the American populace. And that made me think of there's this thing in the school system where there was a report, and I'm trying to find it. In the Courier Journal this week, it said that kids in Jefferson County public schools are really doing badly. They're, I'm going to read this directly from the Courier Journal. It says, 49% of elementary school students were proficient in the state in or distinguished in reading, while just 36% in Jefferson County schools achieve that standard. On math assessments, in the state, 43% of elementary school students were proficient or distinguished, but 31% of Jefferson County schools students were. And in science, 37% in the state are proficient, with 25% in Jefferson County schools. And those are horrible numbers. Those are a sign that people are not learning anything. And I think that's a reflection of the school system, but it's also the reflection of these efforts to take money away from public schools. Let's go back to socialism. Funding public schools is a form of socialism.
Well, and the Kentucky and the Department of Education now is like taking away masters of public health, all these master's degrees and stuff. They're like not gonna. I don't know.
The U.S. Department of...
Yes.
Well, the U.S. Department of Education is run by the woman who used to run the wrestling,
right.
WWE, the World Wrestling Enterprise. You know, we have a Secretary of Education who would go into the ring and do fake fights with the other wrestlers. It's like a president. Donald Trump used to go into the WWE rings and do these fake fights with people, and you know that's really stupid. But it also reflects the intellect of our leaders in this country when you put people who are incompetent in their jobs in these important jobs. Like, you know, you have a Secretary of Health who has brain worms. His worm was eaten by brain. His brain was eaten by worms, or the other way around. That's how he would say it. But that's the person who's like supposed to look out for our health.
Now they've asterisked that vaccines cause autism on the HHS websites. CDC actually.
Yeah, CDC.
Yeah.
CDC is run by Mehmet Oz. You know, Dr. Oz, who, you know, was just offering all these ridiculous remedies for diseases.
They're all TV personalities.
Yes, let's talk about Mehmet Oz. You know, he's a Muslim. So is he introducing Sharia law in the CDC? I don't know. I mean, if you're going to go that stupid, then let's go all the way. Let's look at all the other people. And yeah, it's really unfortunate because I also saw that Kentucky adults, maybe 22% read below a third grade level, and 14% have very low literacy skills, and that's the Appalachian Learning Initiative has that, and the National Center for Education Statistics.
We're 45th in the country for education overall.
Yeah.
So you were comparing Jefferson County to the rest of the state.
Right,
the whole
right.
state is at the bottom.
Yeah, right. It's
and it wasn't always like this, because we had CARA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act, was in the early 90s, and it did a lot to raise the educational standards in Kentucky, but it's just been going down and down over the last several years. In fact, I was reading an article in the Paducah Sun that the Kentucky Secretary of State, Republican, Michael Adams, was even lamenting about the fact that our populace is now so focused on Fox News and national personalities that we're not focused on very core issues that we really have problems with, which is our education system and housing even. So I thought that was very interesting that he was bringing this up. It makes me wonder whether he is eyeing
higher office when
yes.
Bashir leaves.
Yes.
I haven't seen his name mentioned among candidates for governor, but if he's not looking for higher office, just the fact that a Republican is saying these things is showing, hey, we're really in bad shape. The Democrats can say this every day, every minute, and it'll be written off as, oh, you're just a bunch of, I'm going to go back to the stupidity here. You're just a bunch of socialists. And it doesn't register until a Republican says it, even though the Democrats have been saying it for years and years. But now, oh, this must be real because a Republican's saying it.
Right. Well, and I do want to say I tend to be a little more optimistic than you, but I am seeing a lot more cracks in the Republican Party. I'm seeing a lot more fissures. I'm seeing a lot of concern about candidates for the midterm elections in 26 being aligned with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. This is giving me hope, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm cynical most of the time, but I'm also seeing cracks in that wall of, I'm going to say, a wall of stupidity, where, I think the farmers are beginning to come to their senses,
right,
because, they were, I've said this before, and I don't understand. Everybody who voted in the last presidential election was alive when Donald Trump was president the first time. And they saw all the horrors of what happened then. And 8 years later, they decide, ooh, I want that again. Even though farmers were burned the first time he was there, even though the health of America was like completely wiped out because of COVID, because he didn't do anything to stop COVID. And hundreds of thousands of Americans, close to 1 million Americans, died of COVID. Worldwide, it was worse. And the United States is the country that leads on helping the rest of the world avoid these things. But just took forever to come up with, it actually happened fast, but it took longer than it should have, because MAGA people were doing things like saying, well, I'm not going to wear a mask because I can't breathe. I have a mask on. And today we're looking at people with like ICE and Border Patrol wearing masks in the cities. These are MAGA people who were 8 years ago saying, I'm not wearing a mask because I have a hard time breathing. Now they're masked because
money,
plus,
and power,
and taking people out of the country. They're brutal. So everything they said in the past, going back to my favorite word, is bullshit. They were willing to let Americans die back during the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, because they felt that any mask on their face was an infringement on their rights. Now they're wearing a mask because they want to take away they want to infringe on the rights of others. So there's this, I think that's a crack that people are seeing. I think that, there are people who are saying, I didn't vote for this, but I think this is a Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of response, because I didn't vote for this. They're saying I didn't vote for this because I didn't expect it to affect me. I thought it was going to get those people. Right. And one thing they didn't realize was that the autocrats and the billionaires think they are those people. That's who they were aiming at. That's the people who got all the money, who got all the benefits of this administration, who, you read stories daily where people who were pardoned by Trump are now going back to jail for doing the same thing they did before they got pardoned. And I think people are also seeing that. They're realizing that, that's evil. They're seeing that the person who told them that he was going to release the Epstein files on day one has been doing everything to keep them hidden.
And who said the grocery prices were going to go down when he was elected.
Gas prices are going to go down and everything's going to be great and America's going to be respected. Mm-hmm. They were all lies. And I think people, there's a certain percentage of the population that's never going to get it. And they say things like, you shouldn't, I don't know why you Democrats want the Epstein file released because you know that there are Democrats in it. And my answer to that is, fuck those guys. Yeah, release the files. Fuck those guys. Yeah. Because they are evil.
Right.
That's, this is not, there's no party affiliation on this issue. If you're going to advocate for people who are raping children, then you have to, if that's what your belief is, if you're so caught up in the MAGA mindset that you can't tell wrong from right, or you're willing to forgive wrong on one side, but attack people on the other side because they want to help people. Like going back to that socialism argument. Yes, we should be funding public schools. Yes, we should be paying for people's health care, making health care something manageable. Medicare for all is the right answer here.
SNAP.
Yeah, we should not be taking food out of the mouths of children.
Right.
We should not be taking money away from foreign programs that are keeping kids alive on the other side of the world. This is just pure evil. If you support MAGA at this point, if you're supporting this administration at this point, you've got, and if you say you're Christian, you've got a lot of answering to do when you die, and if you go to heaven, if heaven exists, you're going to have to explain a lot of things, because that's not the ticket to getting to heaven.
Yeah.
And this, I don't know if you saw this, but I think it was last week or the week before, someone as a test called up churches around the country and said, there was another state, and they called them churches in their area, and they were pretending to be a mother who was looking for formula for her child. And these churches were saying, you're not a member of the church, so we're not going to help you. The same person called a mosque, and the mosque, the imam at the mosque said, sure, where are you? We're going to deliver your formula. There's this disconnect among Christians that goes against everything they are supposed to have believed in. And it's another example of it's not Christianity, it's Christian nationalism, which is a foundation for the Trump administration. They've taken advantage of a bunch of religious people, and they promised them not salvation, but they promised them retribution, which is, it's like vengeance as opposed to compassion, or, intolerance is the key instead of tolerance. So,
Jesse, we haven't mentioned the fact that there was that video with Mark Kelly and several other senators who had, they had been in the armed forces of some kind.
Oh, yeah.
And Trump didn't like what they had to say, and then he called for their execution.
Right. Well, these senators, or these congressional Democrats, were saying, we were in the military, we served our country, mm-hmm. and our military code says that you do not follow illegal orders.
Right.
It's just a simple thing. If an order is illegal, you have no duty to follow that, and the courts will support you on this. And Donald Trump, who's putting troops in New York, trying to put troops in New York, but has put them in Portland, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Charlotte.
Memphis.
I think it was Charlotte. Mm-hmm. Charlotte was the most recent ones. Mm-hmm. And who has these ICE agents, or these Border Patrol people, pulling people out of their cars. And just
total racial profiling.
Yeah, all racial profiling, and just like grabbing American citizens, mm-hmm. separating families from children, mm-hmm. and I think I'm missing my point here, but this is
he called for the execution.
Right, he called for the execution of these people, and the reaction again wasn't, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" The reaction is, or the way the major media played is, Donald Trump made a controversial statement, as opposed to, Donald Trump is doing fascist things or calling for fascist actions, and
must be impeached immediately.
Right, and I think that's one of the terrors that the Trump administration has, because he was impeached twice in his first term. He's going to be impeached again if Congress is taken over by Democrats. Mm-hmm. Will the Republicans in this cycle realize that we have to stop this, or are they going to let it keep going? Because it's getting to the point where the Republican Party should be abolished. They are just being really taking a road that is antithetical, I forget the word, but against what everything Americans supposed antithetical.
And it's not the same. It's a false equivalence to say that I'm not happy with the Democratic Party right after you just said that.
Right.
I'm not happy with the Democratic Party, but we're not murderers, starvation,
rapists.
Right. Well, there might be some rapists as we get the Epstein files. I want to tell you a few more reasons why I'm hopeful. We're seeing cracks in the Republican Party, which is great. The other thing I'm seeing is because of these high prices of food and shelter and clothing, we're seeing local nonprofits who are having a much more difficult time getting grant funds, right? Because of the way that the federal government is stacked up against nonprofits right now. But people are showing up big time for their food pantries, their local food pantries. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of the folks on the ground that are getting those winter coats together. It's cold and people are going to be cold, and we have a lot of people who are unhoused, and we have a lot of people who are hungry. And people really are showing up for this, and it really gives me hope. I'm on the board of directors of Feed Louisville, and we have just launched a no waste, no hunger campaign to make this season a little fuller for everyone. And we have all these participating partners, lots of restaurants that you go to, Cafe Lulu, Four Pegs, Biscuit Belly, Grasso, Mayan Cafe, The Fishery, The Fat Lamb, 1020, Heine Bros. All these folks are going to be donating proceeds. We already have all these partners that give us food, and our chefs repurpose the food and get our food out to feeding partners who are working with hungry people every day. A quarter of all food in Kentucky goes to waste, while 1 out of 6 Kentuckians are food insecure, which means they're starving, they're hungry, right? So I'm really proud of this organization, and I'd really love to invite all of you, as you're looking at your year-end charitable contributions, to think locally and to act locally and to support your local nonprofits. Another thing I wanted to just share personally is I think that I've come up with the 3 things that I'm super focused on as a resistor. One is, yes, I'm showing up for rallies, and it feels really good to show up at rallies. I know that some people don't think that they're, effective, but these last rallies that we had just under 3% of the American populace showed up for the last No Kings rallies. And, we need 3.5% to really show that we might be at a tipping point for, really breaking into this fascistic authoritarian regime. So showing up for rallies. The second one is building local community, really increasing local involvement. We've got work on the ground on immigration justice and showing up and being eyes and ears for ICE. We've got lots of folks on the ground tackling, as I said, food insecurity or hunger issues, housing, etc. And so that feels really good to build local community and to act locally. That's where our power really is. And then third, leaning into my joy. Poet Mary Oliver says that joy is not meant to be a crumb. I fully agree with her. I love music. My last name means song in Hebrew, and I love music. I sing. I grew up singing with my mom. I just found out that your vagus nerve, apparently, your tension and all that nervous stuff gets relaxed when you sing. And I didn't even know that. I just knew it always felt good. And this week I've had the most magical musical week. I scored 4 free tickets to go see I'm With Her at the Ryman, the historic Ryman auditorium in Nashville. It used to be the site of the Grand Ole Opry. The acoustics are awesome. The history is awesome. And it was a perfect show. It was a perfect show. They were completely in sync with one another harmonically. Their musicianship was superb. Jason Isbell came out for an encore and sang with them. I mean, perfect.
Can you tell me what kind of music that is? 'Cause
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
bluegrass.
I'm not familiar with them. Okay.
So Sarah Jarose, Sarah Watkins from Nickel Creek and other endeavors, and Aoife O'Donovan. And they're all really talented singer-songwriters in their own rights. And Sarah Jarose, oh my gosh, she oozes music. It looks so effortless. She plays all kinds of different instruments. She's a child prodigy. And it was perfect. How often do you go to a perfect concert? It was perfect. Then I drove home to Louisville, and then I drove to St. Louis the next day because this fabulous indie folk, I guess, guy, his name is Jose Gonzalez, and I heard him on WFPK. He lives in Sweden, and he has a really interesting story. His family were South American, and they had to flee South America because of a coup d'etat, and got sanctuary from the Swedish embassy in Brazil. And they moved to Brazil in the 70s, and then Jose Gonzalez was born in the 70s. But
They moved to Sweden or to Brazil?
Sweden. They
Okay,
went to
the
Brazil
70s.
and got the Swedish embassy to grant them asylum to Sweden. So these Latin American intellectuals and altruists and all this stuff they now live in Sweden, and he is super talented. Really good crowd in St. Louis for Jose Gonzalez. Look him up. He really sings about opening up your heart, and he really played music that just everybody was like in sync with each other and swaying in the room. It was really beautiful. And then tomorrow I sing in another Voces Novae concert at the Cathedral of the Assumption, and it's called Celestial. And the Cathedral of the Assumption has these gorgeous stars painted on the ceiling of the cathedral, and we're singing songs about the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets. And I'm even playing a water glass to simulate the sounds that stars make, and we have different tones that we've tuned the water glasses to. Mine is A. So you got to come out and hear us if we get this out. Come to Voces Novae's concert, 3 p.m. Sunday. What is tomorrow? Sunday.
The 23rd.
The 23rd at the Cathedral of the Assumption. So all of these things, Jesse, and then I also have a big action, but do you want to say something?
Well, my fun things to do are,
Yes.
I've been going to sporting events
Yes.
for the past couple of weeks. I went to the Louisville versus Kentucky women's basketball game today. It was a disappointment as a Louisville fan, but it was a great basketball game. There had to be at least 8,000 people at the Yum Center
Awesome.
for this. And that's, Louisville's always been a great city for women's basketball. So that was what I did this week. Last week, I went to the first round of the NCAA soccer tournament, women's soccer tournament, where Louisville played Kentucky again. That was a really great match because it went through the normal time, then they had to do 2 overtime periods, then they did a shootout, and Louisville won on the shootout.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that was one, and the thing was, it was $10 to go in. So I took my son and my grandson to that, and there was this little playground where the kid could play whenever he wanted to. He was making friends all over the place. We were watching some really good soccer, some really good women's athletics, and it was fun. And the week before that, the ACC field hockey tournament was in Louisville, so I went to a couple of those matches. Louisville didn't do well there, but the fact that they got into the playoffs at all was great, and that was free. So they're
And women's volleyball.
Women's volleyball. I think they're like the number 6th ranked team in the country.
So good.
So women's sports is really huge in Louisville, and they really take it seriously here. The fact that they can fill the Yum Center for a women's basketball game is amazing. The volleyball team sometimes goes to the Yum Center. They do very well. They have their own arena. I've been to that arena. It's really loud, but it's always packed. And the thing about these sporting events is families can afford it. If you're looking for affordability, these are the things that you can take your kids to. They're actually watching athletics. They're learning. A kid can learn the basics of sports by watching these sports, and you don't have to spend a lot of money for it. Like last week, I think the Louisville men's basketball team played Kentucky, and I looked up the price because I thought, oh, maybe I want to go to this. A ticket to the men's basketball game against Kentucky was $1,000, and that's way beyond anything anybody can afford, except if you're very rich or if you're a rabid fan where you can't control yourself. But I spend $20 to go to the women's basketball game, spend $10 to go to the women's soccer game, spend nothing to go to the field hockey game. And during the baseball season, Louisville sports is very cheap. I mean, I walked into free baseball games, and that team went to the College World Series. So these are, when you're looking at things to do for fun, you're also looking for affordability, because this is the time to look for these things. And you don't have to go to like Cincinnati or in Indianapolis to see the professional teams. Just hang around locally and watch the sporting events here, because they're really affordable. You can take the whole family, and it's a lot of fun.
It is. So I'm going to talk about a big action for everyone to know about. This is taking place from Tuesday before Thanksgiving to the Tuesday after, and it's called WeAin'tBuyingIt.com. WeAin'tBuyingIt.com. We'll put the link
Podcast
after the podcast. So basically, it's saying pause on shopping from major companies that are enabling this administration. And it's got, this action is taking direct aim at Target for caving to this administration's biased attacks on DEI, Home Depot for allowing and colluding with ICE to kidnap our neighbors on their properties, and Amazon for funding this administration to secure their own corporate tax cuts. So if you could really think about changing your behavior this week and Black Friday and everything, go ahead and support your local small business this week and every week. I'm even thinking of buying my groceries before Tuesday for Thanksgiving so that I don't have to shop at, Kroger and these big national grocery chains. So really consider using your money really wisely this week, and please try not to spend it on these major companies that are enabling these horrible policies.
And just to add to that, these are boycotts, and these boycotts do work, because look at what happened with Jimmy Kimmel and Disney.
Yeah.
They got rid of him because Trump said to get rid of him, and then people canceled their Disney subscriptions and stopped going to Disneyland, and Kimmel's back on the air. These things are effective, because as we've learned in corporate America, the only thing that matters is profit and money. And if they don't get the profit and they don't get the money, number one, the executives don't get their bonuses, their stock options go down, and their boards of directors decide, well, maybe we should get rid of you and get someone else to get these numbers coming back up. So
the website says this really well too. They say, when you join the We Ain't Buying It movement, you commit to mobilize your consumer power, spend with intention, center family and community, support Black immigrant and persons of color owned businesses, support retailers that have stood firm in democracy. It's time to put our money where our values are. For too long, we've funded companies that take our communities for granted, disrespect our dignity, and ignore our needs. Join the movement now. Again, this is weain'tbuyingit.com.
Right, and I think next week Amazon has its big
Oh yeah,
Black Friday thing.
Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all the things.
Yeah,
Don't participate.
Yeah, buy locally.
Support mutual aid.
Yeah, you're preserving your community by buying locally, and Jeff Bezos doesn't need another $1 billion. He'll be fine. You take, as I keep saying with these billionaires, if they give away 99% of their wealth, Elon Musk still has $5 billion. Jeff Bezos still has $2 billion. Mark Zuckerberg still has $2 billion. That's giving away 99% of their wealth. So
they're still billionaires.
They're still billionaires. Yeah, they're still billionaires. It will not. For them, it's just like a matter of who's got the biggest bankroll. Yes, you like the way I did that.
Like that.
But they're not. It will hit them in the sense that their egos will be shattered, but they're still going to walk away with the billions of dollars. So, they don't need the money. They shouldn't get the money. And they'll say that, if you do this, then you're going to hurt our workers. Well, it's their fault because they should be paying their workers a decent salary.
Absolutely.
And let's see,
we got Thanksgiving coming up this week. We really wish everyone a happy and healthy Thanksgiving with your family, with your friends. I hope you have enough to eat. And that we all look for things and can see things that we are grateful for. I'm grateful to you, Jesse.
Thank you, and I'm thankful that we're able to do this every couple of weeks, just to, if anything, we're venting. And I think there are a lot of people out there who probably are venting the same way. And
you're not alone.
Yeah, and if you have doubts on what your thought processes, or if you're looking for the right words, we hope that these words that we give you will help you in your counter arguments if necessary when you're talking to, as they say, crazy Uncle Liberty over the Thanksgiving dinner.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Our closing music is by John Chamberlain.